Cartoon Cat from Trevor Henderson versus Skitzo the bear from Comic. Two cartoon nightmares from different dimensions who take absolute pleasure in their slaughter. Both are some of the biggest menaces in their universes, but with all their absurd abilities, which one is truly more dangerous? That's what we are here to figure out today. Starting with the Cartoon Cat. The Cartoon Cat is a cartoonish monster from the Trevor Henderson mythos. A grotesque, almost realistic take on an old-fashioned cartoon character. Its appearance is inconsistent, to say the least. Sometimes it's a humanoid cat, barely taller than a person. Other times it towers larger than a two-story building. Its form is never constant, and always shifting. But the consistent thing is that it always seems to mimic the style of a vintage cartoon character, complete with white gloves and exaggerated animated movements. But what it truly is not a cartoon. Trevor described it as a shape-shifting blob trapped in an animated appearance. Something unnaturally wrong. Something that simply doesn't belong in our world. But despite its cartoonish appearance, this creature is highly hostile, using its playful looks as nothing more than a mask. Behind it lies only one intention: slaughter. The cartoon cat is known to wander abandoned places, stalking and tormenting unsuspecting victims, devouring them, or sometimes, far worse. It is such a sadistic entity that it is even said to be worse than the man with the upside-down face, a being who literally feeds on human suffering. Because what the cartoon cat is not a cartoon. It is an entity that lives inside the shell of a cat, only revealing itself and its intentions once people are unlucky enough to get close. What it truly is a malevolent cosmic parasite, hollow, rotten, and ancient, and a massive hunger for violence and atrocities that can never be filled. Those who encounter it almost always meet an unfortunate fate, and for good reason. This makes the cartoon cat by far one of the most dangerous creatures in the Trevor Henderson mythos. And part of that reason that makes the cat so terrifying are its abilities. First is its malleability. Much like a living cartoon, it can stretch and warp its body to almost any degree, twisting itself into impossible shapes as it pleases, making this creature almost indestructible. And in many ways, it is. The cat also has the ability to manipulate sound, being able to distort and warp sound, or even mimic noises to draw in unsuspecting victims in any way he likes. And most interesting of all is its ability to redact information. It can literally erase or alter details about itself, removing knowledge from any source. On an official fact sheet, the only words that were visible are the ones that were not hidden behind redaction bars. If the cartoon cat doesn't want you to know something, you won't. Trevor Henderson has described this creature's existence tied to belief. As long as people acknowledge it to a certain degree, the cat can manifest into our world through a dimensional gateway. In other words, the cat is pretty much impossible to get rid of in any traditional sense. It is a higher dimensional being that endures as long as it's remembered, internally bound to the materium that we call our world. But the cartoon cat isn't done yet, because as Trevor has stated, it is his strongest creation, more powerful than any other entity in the entire mythos. It seemingly has unchecked limitations, so extreme that even other monsters avoid its lair. Some even suggest that theoretically in a fight between all the mythos creatures, the cartoon cat would still emerge victorious. But what does that really mean? Because when scaling it to other entities in the mythos, it starts to show how powerful it really is. With it being able to compare to the abilities of the Void Nugget, a being who can theoretically survive in a black hole. To put this in perspective, even a small black hole would reach around the energy of around 2,170 wettatons of TNT, enough to destroy a large star, and the void nugget just casually exists in them. You can even compare to beings like the Long Horse, a creature whose length is infinite, breaking the laws of physics just by existing, and utterly incomprehensible to the human mind. Described as a needle threading between the layers of a reality, it can travel through higher dimensional planes, and it can even scale to beings like the Friend from the Void Planes and the 12th dimensional Body Hive, beings who come from a completely higher existence than our natural world. And the cartoon cat is stated to be stronger than all of them. This creature is an absolute menace, and with such unchecked limits, you never truly know where it ends. In short, the cartoon cat isn't just a cartoonish entity, it's a shape-shifting, sound-warping, reality-bending entity tied to belief itself, and capable of feats beyond comprehension. It is nearly indestructible, unknowable, and more powerful than even the most incomprehensibles of creatures in the mythos. But the question does remain. How does it stack up against another twisted, cartoonish predator from a different dimension? That's where Skitso the bear comes in. On first appearance, Skitso may seem like a harmless cartoon, drawn in the traditional 1920s style, the kind of character you expect to see on a TV back then. But anyone who's actually watched these cartoons quickly went insane, and that's because these shorts were not normal. At its core, Skitso is a sun bear, animated with all the classic cartoony hijinks you'd expect. Except the truth reveals itself almost immediately. This is not a friendly face. Skitso is a creature that revels in slaughter, hunting, and killing anyone in its path, and one of the most horrifying beings to ever come out of a cartoon. Skitso is a creature that on the surface behaves like a normal cartoon character, wandering his world, walking through forests, sitting by lakes, just observing whatever antics unfold him. Most of the time, he seems quiet, even harmless, but that's only the part of him he wants you to see. Even when he appears calm, something is never right about him. He might sit in the corner, smiling or staring at nothing, until he decides to act, and that's when things never go well. His sanity being dangerously low, and when it hits zero, which is something that happens pretty frequently, he becomes a force of nature, unstoppable, unpredictable, and a being that no one can contain. Because Skitso's true personality is that of a sadistic, murderous demon. He feels absolutely no remorse for anything he does. Whether it's an anthropomorphic cartoon or just some helpless creature, he will end you without hesitation. And the worst part, he absolutely loves this. He finds a pure thrill in chaos and destruction he causes. Skitso is needlessly so cruel that even sometimes other demons call out his pointless killings, and when you're putting demons to shame, you know there is a limit you've crossed. But when it comes to his abilities, this is where Skitso truly becomes terrifying. His powers function almost like a twisted version of Toon Force, letting him bend reality however he pleases. He can contort and warp his body in ways that defy logic, twisting his head all the way around, sprouting tendrils from any part of his body, casually removing the top of his head, or even just liquefying himself and reforming on the other side completely unharmed. His regeneration is absurd, able to recover from losing chunks of his face, and he can even grow to enormous sizes at will. Skitso can also summon weapons seemingly out of thin air, or even pull them directly from his own body, like his pants, his mouth, or even his hair, you name it. On top of that, he can transform everyday objects into deadly weapons, though he almost always prefers his classic knife. His very presence distorts reality when his sanity breaks, corrupting everything around him. This madness, however, doesn't just stay confined in his cartoon world either. It leaks into our reality, driving viewers insane just by watching him. His powers don't stop there. Skitzo has revived the impossible, like bringing a cooked bird back to life and letting it fly again. He can summon swarms of skeletal bats, fire lasers from his eyes, shatter the laws of existence at a whim, and in one instant he blew a bubble and somehow transferred the pop to another character's head, making their skull explode instead of the bubble. But perhaps his most horrifying trait is his direct tie to hell itself. Skitzo is practically immortal, able to summon a train that drags victims straight to hell, or simply open a gateway whenever he chooses. And even worse, even if somehow he's destroyed, he always respawns in hell, making him nearly impossible to kill for good. And quantifying how powerful Skitzo truly is extremely difficult. But some of his feats give us an idea. Starting with his overall speed, he was able to pilot a spaceship from the moon to the sun in roughly 14 seconds, meaning his reaction timing would be around 36 times the speed of light. And that's not all either. As we mentioned earlier, he can traverse between cartoon and hell at will, completely different dimensional areas, and he doesn't even need to go through the portals that are specifically designated for travel between the two. In terms of sheer destructive power, he's also been able to destroy the sun, ramming it into his rocket. While the sun in this instance may be smaller than a traditional star within the cartoon, based on the fact it still functions like one and is just a cartoonish portrayal of our sun, assuming that it is really our sun that we're looking at here, its energy would be around 540.5 quetatons of TNT to destroy it, putting him into the star-level ranges of power. And yet, Skitzo is probably even stronger than this. His reality warping abilities intensify when he loses control. And even in hell, he is arguably one of the most powerful beings there, if not the most, with the effects of his madness seeping into our world from his cartoon. He could potentially operate at a higher dimensional scale than just the traditional 3 dimensions. So in short, Skitzo isn't just a cartoon gone wrong, he's a reality-warping, dimension-hopping force of chaos. His powers are nearly limitless, his madness spreads beyond his cartoon realm, and his immortality ties him to hell itself. He's unstoppable, unpredictable, and one of the most dangerous beings imaginable, and he promises to savor every bit of that. Now that we've explored just how monstrous Cartoon Cat and Skitzo truly are, it's time to ask the question again. If these two twisted cartoonish predators ever cross paths, how would that battle play out? Starting with our first look at these two, let's analyze how they measure up in physicality. These two characters are ridiculously tough, with both of them scaling into the star-level ranges, although Cartoon Cat does have the advantage when it comes to this in sheer physicality by around 4 times. But this is also in calculable terms, because these two characters can go much farther, that really physicality doesn't matter that much in a match like this, so let's go over some other factors. When looking at their speed feats, these two are extremely hard to calculate which one is beyond the other, which might seem surprising because on the surface, Skitzo would seem to have an edge, based on the fact he can go way faster calculably, being around 36 times the speed of light in reaction speeds. While the Cartoon Cat is a lot harder to measure, however, both of them seemingly have similar speed ranges once we get into some other things. Because both of these characters can travel through dimensions, with Skitzo literally being able to travel between hell and the normal world, and Cartoon Cat being able to scale to Longhorse, being able to travel through other dimensions, and we know for a fact the Cartoon Cat is traveling through dimensions because that's where it comes from. And while technically the Cartoon Cat's traveling through dimensions is way more concrete of an infinite speed scaling in comparison, the cat also does suffer from the fact that it does seem like he needs belief in order to enter our world in the first place, which is an argument you can make, but the thing is, I think the most fair assumption is to say that they draw in speed, but I can see you giving either the advantage depending on what you want to believe. But But the difference is that it doesn't really factor that much either in a fight like this, so speed is not gonna be what matters here. But something important to go over is their abilities. Skitzo actually holds a pretty decent advantage here. He just has way more confirmed abilities in comparison. He has genuine toon logic on his side, while the cartoon cat may have similar functions and similar ideas with his malleability, being decently on par with Skitzo's. The difference is that the cartoon cat is a cartoon impersonator, not a true cartoon like Skitzo is. And in comparison, Skitzo just has way more overall abilities that he has shown, being able to shoot lasers out of his eyes, summoning other creatures to fight for him, being able to transfer a bubble, popping to his opponent, making them explode, sending you to hell. In terms of what he has shown in comparison, Skitzo definitely overall has the advantage here. Although, to give Cartoon Cat some credit, being able to redact information about itself isn't technically going to be that useful in a physical fight sense, but it is an ability that Skitzo has never really encountered before. But in terms of overall abilities, Skitzo has the overall advantage. However, that changes when it comes to overall intellect, and this one in spades is going to the Cartoon Cat. Skitzo is a really interesting character when it comes to intellect because as much as he does killing throughout the series and he does seem genuinely very experienced in it, in comparison to what the cartoon cat is, he's not that intelligent. Or at least, definitely more instinct driven than the cat is. In fact, most of his cartoons seems to have him trying to understand certain things around his world just to get insane over it once his sanity drops and his mindset is just kill. Cartoon Cat, on the other hand, is way more crafty, tormenting and manipulating his victims in the worst way possible, and he understands how people work and how they function, and the best overall way to hunt them down for his own amusement. It is very obvious, even with the little known information on the cat we have, he is far smarter from what we've seen. But there's a couple more things to mention when it comes to these characters, because despite the fact that the other factors are somewhat important to this debate, none of them really matter that much when we get into the more important ones, with one of those being their immortality. These two characters are insanely hard to kill, because they can't really die in the traditional sense. Skitzo is a character who can just come back from hell once he's destroyed. Cartoon Cat, on the other hand, his existence is literally tied to belief, meaning he can literally never die or be defeated, at least not fully, as long as that belief exists for him, with him being able to come back through dimensional gateways. Although there is a theoretical way to beat him outright. If a character does defeat him, it is theorized that he could potentially become weaker in the progress of this because that belief of him will make him seem to not be the strongest anymore. But there's only one way these two characters can bypass immortality, and that's when we're in the final category, power. Both of these characters are incredibly powerful, and there is no doubt about that. But despite the fact that the Cartoon Cat's weakness might seem more exploitable on the surface, the problem is Skitzo has no real way to exploit this weakness, because when it comes to power, the Cartoon Cat has him outmatched completely. Skitzo's full power is a little hard to say, because theoretically, if you say he is the most powerful being between the landscapes of his world and hell, and you say he could potentially scale to all of this would put him into the multi-universal level ranges, potentially even getting him to 4th dimensional if we take full credit for how he's able to make people watching his cartoon go mad. But the difference is that Cartoon Cat's theoretical ends are so much higher. He literally comes from a higher dimensional existence, making him absolutely a 4th dimensional being. And this is at his bare minimum. Compared to that, this would be Skitzo's best theoretical overall power. But the Cartoon Cat can scale even higher than this, scaling to beings that come from the 12th dimension, like the 12th dimensional body hive. This would put the Cartoon Cat so much higher in power compared to Skitzo by several infinite layers, since the Cartoon Cat is confirmed to be the strongest Henderson creature. And even if you don't want to go that route and say that the Cartoon Cat shouldn't be this powerful, regardless on how you take it, the Cartoon Cat is just higher scaling into that 4th dimensional scaling than Skitzo would be, which would still make him more powerful. So Skitzo isn't going to be able to defeat him outright with this theoretical weakness the cat has. So the real question comes down, can the cartoon cat even kill Skitzo? Well, he actually kind of can. Again, the cartoon cat is so much higher in dimensional scale that he would pretty easily be able to destroy the underworld, at least if given enough time, since the underworld doesn't really have a proper scaling to it. So we can't really say if it's anything beyond a 3-dimensional dimension, or at best maybe 4th dimensional. It doesn't really matter how many times Skitzo comes back, and because Skitzo would have at least some belief in the cat, when going down there, the cat would be able to access the underworld, if not Skitzo just outright bringing the cat to the underworld sometime in the fight, which is very in character for something Skitzo would do. But you might even ask the question, like, couldn't Skitzo just kill everyone that believes in the cartoon cat? Even if somehow Skitzo learned that the cat itself is tied to belief, it wouldn't really help that much, because the cat can also redact that very knowledge away, preventing him from exploiting it at all, and given that Skitzo's mind is really unstable, it's very unlikely he would actually strategize around this weakness, at least one to this level of abstractedness. And based on the fact, it doesn't really seem that human belief is the only thing that keeps the cat around, because the other Henderson monsters being around also imply that other creatures believing the cat, allowing access to our dimension also. So, in the end, while Skitzo is a reality-warping, dimension-hopping force of chaos, the cartoon cat just exists on a whole nother level. They are smarter, more powerful, and their belief across dimensions keeping them alive, the cat's potential is virtually limitless. No matter how many times Skitzo returns or how insane he becomes, he simply cannot match this high-dimensional scale or raw destructive power of the cartoon cat. Oh, in this clash of twisted predators, one thing is clear. The Henderson mythos' most dangerous creation reigns supreme. The cartoon cat wins.
Better start running.